So I bet you didn't know there's 3 levels to listening, and why do you need to know them? Number 1, the biggest problem with getting results with your clients is actually truly understanding their reality as they language it. So in today's session, I'm going to tell the biggest problem that people have with actually listening, all right? And then I'm going to give you 3 core competencies about how you can actively listen and thus understand your client better. Now, why do you want to do that? Really quickly, if you want rapid results with your clients, then you're going to have to understand how they actually create their reality. If you want to grow a business, all right, you're going to have to understand what your clients say, okay? And this is not by no means something that everyone does, because look, I'm sure maybe you've read some books on active listening. The biggest problem with listening is that most people are not listening to the actual conversation. They're listening to the actual conversation that they're having about what the other person says. Let me say that one more time. Most people are listening to the conversation they're having in the internal voice, the critical voice, the negative voice, whatever you want to call it, all right, about the conversation that's happening. And so in today's session, I'm going to give you 3 ways in which you can break this. The first level of thinking is so that you start, the first level of thinking is all about listening from your intuitive. All right, what does that mean? That's like your body, that's like your presence, that's your ability to just maximize your senses. So you are like fully present with the client. That is the abstract, the highest view of listening. Okay, but how do we kind of get that better? Because they all go hand in hand. So bear with me, it's all going to come together. The second level is listening specifically with your body. And when I say body, as in if you imagine that you're listening with your body, as abstract and maybe as waffly as that may sound, all right, imagine you're listening with your body and you are evaluating your client's body. So what you're looking at is like shifting in movement, all right? You're looking at facial expressions, you're looking at twitches, you're looking and listening to things that are just more aware on their body. Now, if you understand communication, then one of the biggest stats, which is a well-known fact and a researched fact, that communication is broken into 3 key elements. 7% of the words, all right, 38% of the tonality, which is leaving 55% of the body language. And so, of course, learning to read someone's body language is a big part of communication. And so whilst you're doing this as a process, and what I recommend is actively doing this first, all right, you're not going to first focus on like intuitive listening, because intuitive listening comes from being able to be, available to see body changes. So first of all right, let's break these down. The third layer, all right, so we're going abstract to more kind of specific to even more specific. The third layer, and then I'll tell you how they link together and I'll give you an exercise so you can practice this, is listening with words, tonalities, sounds, all of those sorts of things. You're listening for like changes. So the first process is actually to start from the bottom and go up. So practice listening to words, listening to how people create their reality through the meanings in which they talk. All right, listen to how they language a problem, what sort of statements. One of the biggest things that I can ever give as someone advice who is, a coach that wants to create, better skills and understanding around this stuff, because this is, I tell you about, this is cool stuff. All right, when you really get into it, being a coach, consultant, expert author or trainer therapist, where you have information and you can help other people through it, is one of the most fulfilling things that you'll ever do. All right, end of, right? And so first stage, listen with language, listen with the stories and write them down. Like what I used to do, I did probably over 10 years of one-to-one therapy, as in not me being in therapy, as in helping people through therapy in a range of niches, from depression, weight loss and relationships, etc. And anyway, long story short, as they say the statement, write down what the statement is and start looking at it and evaluating it and noticing that a statement that someone says dictates their reality, their world. All right, our world is dictated through language, language is our experience. And so that's the first process. Write down their language, notice the stories they're using, notice the metaphors. Of course, a metaphor creates a certain reality in someone's existence. So notice what sort of metaphors they're using, write it down. What statements, write it down. Okay, acknowledge that. Move into stage 2, all right, which is focusing on body language. What do you notice? Shift, breathing change, you know, like, do they move around in the chair? I mean, it's really simple in terms of, you know, like, whenever I've done a one-to-one negotiation, especially when I did a lot of consultancy, when I used to lay down the deal, all right, it's really simple. You can tell where someone's in the deal because they're leaning towards it. They're getting really excited. As soon as they start leaning back, they're taking a different view on it. And so it's really simple. Just imagine someone's really stuck in something and you just say something as quickly as like, just take a moment, lean back, and let's take a new view on this. Allows them to relax, allows their breathing to adapt. So powerful. So what can you notice in their body changing? What can you notice in their breathing, their rate, how they're crossing their fingers, their eye patterns, their twitching, etc., their expressions. And as you start to become more externally focused, there's so much information that you're missing because the brain can only evaluate a certain amount of information per second. The stats today are 11 million bits per second are pumped at the senses, the eyes, the ears, the nose. All right, you know, these senses, our ability to kind of evaluate what's happening in our reality is deleted, distorted, and generalized through this amazing thing that we call the brain, which creates our representation, our internal image of what's happening. But it's only an image according to our senses and what we can take in. And so as we start to become more aware in life, that's the truth to why people become, you know, wiser as you start, you know, acknowledging where you've, you know, messed up and you start taking on that feedback and all of that beautiful sort of stuff. All right. And then as you start going through, focusing on words, focusing on, you know, tonalities, all of that stuff, as you start to focus on kind of like, you know, the bigger chunk, the body language, you can start to separate the difference. Then you start going into more abstract listening where you are intuitively, you know, you're sitting in that space, that heart-centered space where you're just totally present and focused on your client, and you're in what I'd call a peripheral vision rather than a foveal vision. Foveal vision is where you get really focused on one thing. So imagine if you were watching someone, you know, present, and you could like watch just their arm movements. All right, you miss a lot of the data, but you're just focusing on their arm movements. As soon as you switch to peripheral vision, your senses actually relax more. All right, the peripheral vision is directly linked to the parasympathetic nervous system, which allows your brain to actively slow down your breathing, relax, and so therefore you take more information in. Foveal is directly linked to your sympathetic nervous system, which also creates more reactions in the body, so it creates more anxiety. It's two different focuses to the eye, so that's a different process. Peripheral vision, or what people call in the sports sector like getting into the zone, so you're zoning out. All right, you're zoning out, you're taking out all like the specific focusing, you're zoning out, you're getting into the flow state is what the creative will call it. In the martial arts process, it's calling like the 1,000-yard stare, where they just stare directly through their opponent and become at one with the general surroundings. So that's a peripheral view versus a foveal view. So that's it from today's session. There's 3 levels to listening, all right? And so there's 3 levels to listening. Number 1, focus on words, language, and start to get specific on that. As you start chunking up and becoming more abstract, start focusing on body language and start noticing shifts and changes in how people, you know, use their body to notice, is that congruent? Does that match up with their words? And then as you start to become a master listener, you can start to get more peripheral vision, peripheral hearing, and just be more present and more intuition, naturally trusting your senses, so you start to pick up all this information. As always, thank you for watching this video. If you haven't watched how to grow your life coaching business to 6 figures, I want you to click the video over here, go watch it. And as always, no matter what happens, never give up on your dreams, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you soon.